Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the series of webinars which we are actually conducting as prelude to ICDL. ICDL stands for International Conference on Digital Libraries, and these days we are also, renaming it as International Conference on Digital Landscape. Now, when see why we have started ICDL. ICDL got started in 2004 primarily to bridge the digital divide here in India and the Southeast Asian subcontinent portion. So lots of international experts have arrived during these 5 editions of ICDL, and they enriched discussion, and we, based on our understanding, based on the discussion and deliberations we had, recommended many things to Government of India as well as to others as a different reports form, and these reports are well accepted, and lots of changes in the digital environment or digital library environment has happened these days. In 2019, if you see that our main agenda or main theme of conference is digital transformation for agile environment. Now, digital transformation is a buzzword today. Why digital transformation we have chosen? It is to primarily increase opportunity to share innovative practices and concepts across the profession, to increase the recognition and the support of experimentation and innovative and transformational ideas, to help libraries make use of new and emerging technologies, and to increase leadership. So, keeping this in mind, we have thought that digital transformation is present days every organization is actually going for. So, let's take ICDL as a component of digital transformation, and let us try to build on our discussion on that particular area. Now, in the long run, if you see that not only libraries, digital transformation encompasses every societal, everything in the society, particularly to different industries, particularly to achieve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have meticulously find out that there are 4 areas: health, agriculture, industry, and the health, agriculture, industry, and buildings. So these are 4 energy in a sense. So these are 4 areas which are actually getting lots of lots of impetus from the digital transformation, particularly application of IoT, application of analytics, data analytics, and data-driven processes have started. So keeping this in mind, what we have decided that in this ICDL, not only the library part we will be covering, but some portion of how SDGs are getting met in these 4 areas will also be covered. So I welcome all of you to come and attend ICDL either physically or through digital mode, because you can digitally engage us like webinar you are engaging yourself. You can also engage through different storytelling or through different virtual media. And during the event time, we will release our conference apps, and I hope that you will download that app and get connected to ICDL conference thereafter. So today's event, what we are actually going to discuss is on libraries and integrity of information, and I have with me the session moderator, Dr. Priya Rai, who is actually the in charge of Justice TPS Chawla Library at NLU, National Law University, Delhi, and possesses experience of over 19 years in active library practices. She is a Commonwealth Fellow from Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, London. She has earned PhD from Banasali University, Rajasthan, and also LLM and in IPM from USLLS Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. Her area specialization is copyright laws, digitization, licensing, and research ethics open access. And our main speaker will be Michael Siddle, whom you most probably many of you have already heard. And over to you, Priya, for further deliberations and.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. PK. Well, very good afternoon to all the presenters, to all the people who have joined in this webinar. The topic of this webinar is library and integrity of information. Well, we all know that information technology has transformed the whole world into a global village with a global economy which is increasingly dependent on creative management and distribution of information. And the past decade, the world has been experiencing significant changes in which the need to acquire, utilize, and share knowledge is essentially required. And in modern knowledge society, the fundamental role of information professionals are changing due to the information explosion, evolving forms of proceeding information, different processes of information, different procedures of dissemination of information, and vast increase in the library number of library users. The internet and its enabling technology has consequently evolving in similar vein. The standards for users' privacy are evolving. Well, the technological advances are continuously changing. The methods by the individual can be identified and authenticated online. Well, we all know that the digital information professional is a key player in the digital library environment for identification and authentication of quality and relevant information. The public must have access to the professionals for the inquiry and assistance in retrieving the need information in a digital format. And today we are very fortunate, and I welcome to Professor Michael Stedler, a director of Humboldt University, and he is accompanied with Ms. Emily from University of Michigan, who will be discussing on a very vibrant topic, which is the integrity of the information. Well, before I invite Professor Stedler to present his presentation about the very important topic of today's webinar, I would like to share among our users a brief introduction about the Michael Stedler. As Dr. PK has already said that he is already known face in the library science field, but it's my duty as a moderator to introduce Dr. Michael Stedler among our users community. Well, Professor Michael Stedler has written on a wide range of subjects, including research, integrity, research methodology, digital archiving, copyright, digitization, computer management, and German history. He has been principal investigator on grants from the German Research Foundation, National Science Foundation, and Institute for Museums and Library Service. He has a 12 years of experience as a director in Berlin School of Library and Information Science at Humboldt University, Berlin, and for 6 years he was a dean of humanities faculty. He was editor, library high tech, and for 20 years, and he is still an editor of chief in the World Digital Libraries. He chairs the university's Commission on Research Malpractices. Internationally, he served as the executive director of the iSchools Inc. and group of over 100 universities with LIS programs worldwide. Well, Professor Stedler is the director of the Hidden Center, Humboldt Elsevier Advanced Data and Text Center, and leads its research integrity unity. And we have Ms. Emily. We welcome Ms. Emily in this webinar. Also, she's also joined us and is a master's student at the School of Information, University of Michigan, and is an intern at Berlin School of Library Information Science at Humboldt University, Berlin. So, with this note, I now request Professor Sandler to please continue with his presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. The topic, as you said is libraries and the integrity of information. This is a very broad topic. We're going to go through this relatively quickly. You can see a picture of me here, opening up one of our exhibitions on research integrity. You can also see a few of my credentials in the slide, and I particularly want to emphasize that a lot of these slides were put together with the assistance of Emily Sartorius, who is our intern from Michigan. One of my roles in the university is with research malpractice, and for us it's very important that people who help with research help with projects get proper credit, and that's partly why I am very pleased to have Emily here taking part in this. We've got a number of goals here, and we want you to learn different ways of assessing the quality of information. We're probably going to use mostly digital sources in talking about this. It's important also to understand the role and responsibility that librarians have in collecting quality information. In many ways, it seems obvious. Of course, we collect good things, but there are often choices in good things. The choices become complicated when we stop to think, is this information entirely reliable? And we're going to give you a real-world example that is the climate crisis. And I picked the climate crisis partly because Terry is involved in ecological issues, and also partly because the climate crisis, this heat wave, has really affected India very seriously, and something that I'm sure all of you care about. So our approach here, we're going to give you some basic guidelines. Retraction Watch is a source of good information about what is and is no longer reliable. We're going to give you some, and I have to move the screen a little bit here. We're going to give you an overview here, librarian's role, the big picture, and then the case study. And my slide, yes, a few things to note. There will be some time at the end for questions, so please participate in the chat. You can put your questions there, and we can provide some notes and resources at the end if you want those too. So, basic guidelines. Obviously, there are a number of things we do normally. Peer review in genuine academic journals is important. There are a number of predatory journals. They claim to do peer review, they don't really. Those need to be watched for. It's not always that easy to recognize what they are, but we do need to be sure the journals that we are seeking out are genuine. World Digital Libraries is certainly a genuine journal. I can attest to that. How do you find out, besides the fact that they claim to do peer review? You want to look for references to other scholarly works. References are important. This is partly looking at the footnotes, something we learn as librarians. We want to see if we recognize the scholars, the authors. Sometimes that speaks in favor of an article, it doesn't necessarily. But name recognition is one of those things which we as librarians use routinely to say, this looks like a good work or this doesn't. 4 and 5 are more difficult issues. The nature and the quality of the evidence. Is it factual? And what counts as factual varies from person to person, but we hope within the library community it's pretty clear. Things that have a clear basis where we can have evidence behind it. An example we'll use in a little bit are glaciers melting. There are photos of this. Temperatures. There are measurements that organizations, national organizations use to say, the temperature on average is going up or not. These are facts. And then the logic of an argument is important too. We need to think about whether pieces fit together in an argument. If pieces are backed up with facts, if the logic is clear, that speaks in favor of the information being true. This also depends a little bit on context, a little bit on what you have learned in schools. Now, these first two, peer review and references, those are measurable. You can see if the peer review really happened. You can find out how many references there are. Measurability is an important piece of information integrity. Number three, name recognition. They can have a bibliometric basis. You all know what bibliometrics are. A name recognition is not a guarantee of something being true. We'll see that with retraction watch, but it does help a good bit in knowing what the person is likely to say. And 4 and 5 are a bit fuzzier, they're a bit philosophical, they depend to a degree on viewpoints, and yet these viewpoints are very important. Any of you who have studied the natural sciences know that one of the important things in natural sciences is being able to use facts to build on them to produce something else. So let's take a look here at retraction watch. This is a project that started some years ago. What it does is it reports on scholarly works that have been retracted by journals. This is especially important to us in libraries. Many of our libraries have these journals, and we need to think about how the journals are handled once material has been retracted. What a retraction means is that the publisher ultimately has decided something was wrong in the way the article was done. Sometimes results were falsified. There are some interesting examples of people who simply made up the data. Those are rare examples, but it does happen. There are examples of cases where images were modified, were manipulated, so that they don't really show what it is that they were supposed to. Sometimes this can be accidental, often it's deliberate. Plagiarism is also a factor that is less of an integrity issue than an ethical issue, but it's also a copyright issue. And so there are reports also in Retraction Watch on that. There are a variety of other reasons that can be listed for retractions, including people not following the right processes at their university to get permissions to do a social study. These are important too, because we really need to be sure that the participants are protected properly. We're talking here largely about public studies. We're talking about a site that gives you the explicit reasons why something was retracted. There is also a database that goes with it. Retraction Watch has partnered with Zotero. I think you all probably know Zotero. It is open source product handling bibliometric information, and it will flag retracted articles in real time for researchers. So you don't necessarily even have to go to Retraction Watch. You can search there. The fact to remember is many of our libraries have many of the journals that have retractions. So what do we have here? We have to make decisions about what is true and what is false. Yes, we have to rely on publishers. Some publishers care deeply about this. One of the reasons why Elsevier has funded us to do research in this area is quality is one of the things they sell, and they care very much about this. Now, as librarians, we rely on electronic journals to move, remove, or at least to flag the articles that they have retracted. Not every electronic journal does this, but the major publishers generally will. There are arguments in favor of not removing the whole article because that changes the scholarly record. Clearly, however, we need to flag these in some way so that people do not look at an article and then cite it later. There's a good bit of evidence that articles which have been retracted continue to have a long tail of citation from people who aren't aware that the retraction took place. This is a problem. We need to think about this. I'd like to emphasize, as librarians, we weed out material, we create material. We're not censors. We're not trying to say, you can't read this. What we are trying to say is, you need to be aware with some of these retracted articles that the scholarly basis for these articles has been damaged. Our goal is, of course, to preserve the written record, and the written record is very mixed. There are some very notable people who have made mistakes in their invention, in their information over time. We need to recognize that, but that also isn't a reason that we make them simply vanish from the world. We want to point people to quality sources. People expect that of libraries. They expect that of the information sources that we point to from our libraries. We need to provide a level of warning because not everyone has the tools or experience to know what might be a fake. We do. It's part of our role as librarians to help people out, to help people find correct information. So let's look at the big picture here. How do we make decisions about collections, about content? We use evidence. Evidence is important. Factual evidence, articles, expertise. When we're talking about science, the natural sciences, in the natural science, we don't really prove things. That's a much more mathematical or philosophical concept. We build on the written record. We build on research from the past. We build on things because one tool fits with another. We find out one chemical process works. We make the next chemical process based on what we have learned. This is true for the social sciences and humanities too. We keep learning on the basis of the past. And if the record is wrong, if people are citing the wrong things, if people are trying to build on an article, but the article is false, we're really undermining the whole basis on which our scholarly world has been built. We're undermining the basis on which we can move forward, and that's very dangerous. Controversial topics are one of the most rife areas for having false information. And part of the message I want you to take away here is you need to know the context. You need to know each party's interests. It might be political, it might be economic, it might be others. Know why people are arguing in favor or against an issue. And that's very relevant to our case study. Is climate change happening? Is there a climate crisis? This is important. I'm going to give you a little bit of evidence here. There are people who say it's just fake news, but in fact the factual evidence in favor of climate change is very widespread. There are real measurements of changes in temperature, the earth, the changes in water levels, measuring the melting glaciers, the violent weather. Berlin, for example, where we are right now, had an extremely high temperature a couple of weeks ago, very unusual for this time of year. Parts of France had extraordinarily high temperatures, and as I said in the beginning, temperatures in India were so high that hundreds of people died from this. This is bad. This is evidence. Most scientists, most natural scientists, believe climate change is real. That doesn't mean that it is proven. It means there is a massive evidence that speaks in favor of this being a real issue. I'm going to cite climate journalist Jesse Barrow, who describes it this way. Unlike almost every other future event, climate change is 100% certain to happen. What we don't know is everything else, where or how or when. So, if we believe Jesse Barrow, and I have reason to think that what he is writing is true based on some of these factual materials, then there is indeed a crisis problem. So, I'm going to pose a number of questions to you. And here's the first set. What are the perspectives on climate change? Option A, everyone believes it's a problem and is working hard to stop it. B, many scientists agree it is a problem, but not everyone believes it. C, there is no evidence to back up the claim. Or D, there is evidence out there, but it is completely fabricated. So we're going to ask you to respond on these, and I'll come back to them in the question period. Another set of questions here. The head of, who do you believe when they talk about climate change? Are you going to believe the head of the oil producers organization, OPEC? They have a built-in interest in having oil be sold. Are you going to believe the current president of the United States? Or do you believe a 16-year-old Swedish girl who has actually collected the facts and has started the movement Fridays for climate change, who has actually made quite an impact? More questions. How do we know if a source of information about global climate change is reliable? As I was saying earlier, one of the things we do is look and see whether it was published in a well-established scholarly journal. Is it using the relevant supporting evidence to make a logical argument? Is it using a lot of graphs and images? Is the author famous and widely read? Again, we ask you to put your choices to these answers. We'll talk about them in a bit. What pieces of evidence do we provide to those who ask how to learn more about climate change? Do we give them images of the white cap melting? Do we provide statistical evidence about weather patterns over the past 10 years? Do we do an interview with a scientist in the field? Or an interview with a politician? These are choices. These are real choices that we often make. We need to point to quality sources. We need to point to sources that are really supported by evidence. But must we also present a balanced picture? That is a very important question for us in libraries, and that leads to the final set of my questions. Should a library buy a book that has fake news, that advocates fake news, such as climate change, something that advocates for or against climate change? No, because it's untrue. Maybe because we label it as fake news. Yes, only to show the range of options, or yes, we buy everything. The topic climate change is one where a lot of people say, yes, this is fake, or no, this is true. we need, as librarians, to be able to give a basis for information. So here's some final thoughts. I'll give them before we go to the questions. We can generally rely on peer review process. It's not perfect, but we don't really have a better one. And a peer review process that is managed, well controlled, is an important piece of how journals work. Tools, retraction logs, there are also fact-checking sources. There are a number of places librarians can go to get facts. We need multiple perspectives. That's one of the things we do as libraries, is provide a broad perspective, but we also try not to censor information. Here are some of the references that we have used, and this is our contact information. I actually have probably gone a little bit over my time, so let us go to take your questions now. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Settle, for the very informative presentation to the user. I hope our online, the people who have joined us online in the webinar will be very much, they were very much happy to have all the discussions about the very important topic which you have touched on and you have discussed in a very detailed manner. First is the quality of information about the climate issues and a very important topic which is hunting the whole of research community is the fake news or the information which is not authentic. Well, today's library environment is increasingly relied on information and communication tools, and data authentication or finding the origin and integrity of data is the prime duty of a new age librarian, as I think. So basically, we need to find out authenticity. We need to find out two things. First is authenticity, is what we are getting from the correct entity, and second is the validity and integrity of the data, which is the need of and most important, we can say duty of a librarian to fulfill. And as Professor Michael, you have mentioned you have very closely defined the roles and responsibility of library in collecting quality information which could be applied in knowledge to the real world. And another topic which we touched upon is the topic which is combating with how to combat with the fake information. This is really very important, and the issue is how librarians will reinvent themselves to fight with the fake news or information and critically think on this giant topic. I think this is really very important, and with this note, we have got one question: how to sensitize students about the fake and genuine information?
Okay. That's a very good question. It's one of the key issues we've got. I think one of the interesting examples is the 16-year-old Swedish student who actually decided to dig deeply into climate change issues. Greta is her name, and she gathered so much information that she is now invited to major forums, major discussions, because she's got the factual basis. So how do we sensitize students to this? We get students enthusiastic about two things. One is doing the research, finding the facts, but we can also show students that even someone as young as a 16-year-old can make a difference. If you know the facts, if you know the truth, if you have the evidence, you can persuade people way beyond who you are and where you are. And I think that example, more than anything, is something that should inspire students, not just high school students, not just university students, but everywhere, in how to deal with complex issues.
Thank you, sir. Well, this is really very true. The reliability of information is often more discussion and deliberations on this topic, which is related to the authentication of information. Because the digital information has given us a lot of information which is available. Whenever students, especially we should educate a student, but I think from the school library we should start it, because when the students are preparing a project work, nobody told them about what are the fake information, and they should not put it on their project work. What they do, they search on a Google, and whatever they retrieve from the Google, they put it on the presentation, and they think that they have done a very reliable research. Yes, they think that the research which they have done is very, very good, and they got a good number on that. Whenever they take out the pictures, even I've seen in my home, my kids, they take out a picture from somewhere and paste it and put the information. So, we have another question. I think repeat a lie. The question I have to read: repeat a lie enough and keep repeating it. People will eventually come to believe it is what is called a Goebbels lie. Goebbels lie. In this post-truth era, facts have been manipulated, and in our generation, we have everywhere fake news and its cousins surrounded. Very truly written by. Do you think critical thinking has any role? It's been mentioned by Saleem Ahmed. So Mr. Saleem Ahmed has posed this question about, do you think critical thinking has any role in the topic which we are discussing is a fake news and the related information which is related topic which is surrounded by it?
Critical thinking is absolutely essential part of dealing with false information. Critical thinking is something that we try to teach our library students here, also at Michigan. Critical thinking involves knowing what is a fact, knowing where to find factual sources. These are integral, but how do you put facts and logic together as part of the critical thinking? Courses will help with this, but students need to take part in discussion and debate, because that's where you really learn how to do the critical thinking and interacting with other people who are also thinking critically. Often, especially in our classes, we're not dealing with simple right and wrong answers. As you may have guessed from my presentation, I believe that there is a real climate crisis, but one has to be able to discuss the issues with people who may believe something else, who may have other priorities, and may say, for example, that the economy, the health of the economy, the stock market is a higher priority because it will affect more people than the climate crisis. There is evidence you can bring to this on both sides. My own critical thinking is such that I think there are many more people, there is massive evidence that many more people are being affected by the change in the climate. But we need to be able also in critical thinking to see what the others are arguing, to know what the others are arguing, to know what the other debate points are in order to be able to answer these ourselves. And especially as librarians, we need to be able to present the information to our patrons, to the people who come to our libraries, so that they can come to their own conclusions, because they can be part of the critical thinking process.
I would like to say here one more thing before I go to another question, that the more information pumped into the society, the more complex are the regulations needed to protect this information. I think we need to have some regulations on the data privacy, data security, along with the digital preservation. So this is really very important, especially in ICT era, where the access of information is really very easy, and from the click of the mouse, any person could have any kind of information available. So I think we should work towards creating more preservation policies, how the information will be disseminated, and the role of the like combined, and if they have to consent with this really very important issue, which is the data authentication and about the fake news which is available. So, sir, with this note, I have another question to have and still in front of you. How to go about a book with factual data and with partial viewpoint?
Ah, so a book that contains factual data is a good thing, fundamentally. And most of the things that get published actually do have factual data, but they also have some limitations to it. Let me give you a concrete example here. It's not climate change, but it's something that I encountered recently. The historian Peter Brown, who writes about the Roman Empire, was commenting about previous works in Roman history and saying, yes, they had facts. Many of them were wrong because they discovered new evidence from archaeological sources that the previous authors didn't have. So when we are looking at facts, we need to look at that subset of facts. How broad is the net of the facts? How representative is it? When was a work written to be able to say, yes, this person really had access to all the facts? It can also be that a book is written or a work is written under conditions in a country, in a society where certain facts can't be brought forward. So we need to look for that kind of context and balance. It may be very useful to have a work that has facts, information in a particular perspective, as long as the users, the readers that come to our libraries know what is missing, know how to look at that with, to go back to the previous question, critical thinking, so that they see those works and they analyze them properly. I've also seen works that talk about copyright. I know this is our moderator's great area of interest. And they give you facts, but they're facts that are based on one country's copyright law. Copyright law is really various, and what is true for one country, United States or Germany, isn't necessarily true for another, such as India. People may draw conclusions. India has this British heritage, but the Indian law, I am well aware, is not the same as the British law. It's not the same as the continental German law that we have or the American. So people can cite facts, but the facts in the wrong context simply aren't true.
The harmonization of law all over the world should be done. If we deal with this harmonization of the common policies, whether it could be done by WIPO or somebody else, it is really very important. And as you said that the copyright, you touched the word of the copyright law. Till now, the digital preservation, there is no as such clear-cut laws which deal with the digital preservation policies. I was reading about it. I didn't find even a law which is dealing not nationally but internationally as well. So they have come up with the Digital Millennium Act. Digital Millennium Act they have come up with, and there are certain EU directives which deals with the digital preservation. But the law is towards the digital right management, which is purely towards in favor of the creators of the content, but not for the users and the listeners. Suppose we have this open archival information system. We have searched out something and we found the information is fake. There is no policy clear-cut law which has been created for, we could make some legal points towards them. We can make it criminalized. We could make them offended for doing this. Cyber laws and cyber securities are there, but this is not for related with the data protection and security is there, but authentication of data is really very important issues because this internet society, the information communication technology which is available at the finger point of the students, which are the fake data, fake news, they are getting a wrong information.
Mhm.
They are getting a wrong information, and society could be diverse towards another, they could take a lead towards another direction, which could be really, really bad.
Mhm.
So with this note, sir, I would like to take.
Just to put one particular point,
Yes.
it's not only the law is not there, laws are different in different countries.
Yes.
Cross-border, copyright laws are different, and that creates more problem.
But sir, there is no preservation law
Yes.
available in any of the countries. Sir, with this note, I would like to take another question. Which can you highlight the question? Could you please highlight the question?
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
See,
Yes, misinformation, disinformation is mostly spread through social media, and librarians can't control every such thing in social media. There are 2.5 billion Facebook users alone. What you suggest libraries and library profession to stop dissemination and disinformation in social media era? So
Well-
they are pointed it out about it.
That's a very difficult question. Stopping people in social media is something that we have very little control over. Certainly, the Facebook people who we talk to repeatedly about trying to prevent lies being disseminated there. And we know from reliable newspaper reports, at least I believe they're reliable, that there are cells that are, for example, extreme right-wing racist groups that gather together in Facebook, trade fake stories with each other to the point that, and if you repeat something often enough in these groups, people begin to believe it. This is very dangerous. What can we do as librarians? The best we can do is to say we are a source of reliable information. We're not just a source of rumor. We're not a source of opinion. We're a source where we can provide facts. We can provide the infrastructure so that you know what those facts mean, that you can put them together. We can also talk to social media people. We often provide access to the internet in our own libraries. And there are people who will come and will actually make use of some of these sites that disseminate false information. I'm not sure that it is right for us to keep them from doing this, but to provide the counter information to say, this is a problem. You should, if you look at these statements, here are some other sources that are more reliable that have fact. We know over time that rumor has always played a role in what people think. What the digital world has done, what the social media have done, is to give people who are angry, people who have very extreme opinions, a platform where they can shout and many people will hear them. Our voice is relatively quiet compared to that, but we must still do what we can. A whisper that is true is powerful, and we may be whispering, but if we offer the truth, if we offer the factual information, we have a chance of changing minds. Oh, I did also want just to comment about the preservation issue, which is very important, and the various laws. One of the reasons why we in Germany have chosen to use a LOX private network is so that the data remains here and our laws apply to the preservation of information.
Yes, sir. You have very well said that this is preservation and this digital revolution. I think this digital revolution, whether it is a social network site, because why should be blame only on the social networking site? Even the open the search engines, which are through which we are retrieving information. They have, in some of the extent, I think I have studied also in my LLM project, they have affected society's moral because the information seekers often disregard the laws and moral implications on what they have, and they don't try to to see the authentication of the information, which has been taught to us that the bibliography should be right, whatever we are reading should be right, but this should be educated from the school level, where the children are very innocent, and they start grooming like that. Whatever is posting on the social networking sites, news items, or any of the point on the Google, whether it's a private blog or something, we have lacking in somehow we are lacking in under the copyright policies, the copyright laws. There is not clear-cut policies, but I have examined very thoroughly. I studied a very deep research on the digitization policies about the digital preservation. What we are posting, what we are uploading. We need to, the harmonizingly all the countries, they have to come up and, they have to take a lead about the authentication of the information. So with this is a very long topic, sir. With this note, I would like to take another question, which has been given by the Kavita Chadda from iiml.ac.in. I am Lucknow, and she has written to all the panelists, sir, there is an information overload, how to cover all information so that we may leave important one behind. She has mentioned how to cover all the information so that we may leave important one behind.
Yeah, information overload is a topic that has been around for actually something like a century. The increase in publication, actually more than a century, the increase in publication that came about with the steam-powered press. There were many more newspapers, and some of those newspapers were unreliable. Boulevard, okay, what is the English one? It's a very popular tabloid papers provided misinformation. People would read them because they were entertaining. Information overload is really a problem for people who don't know how to make choices between what makes sense in information and what doesn't. We always have too much information in a sense. What we don't have is enough knowledge to choose the right information, and that's our role in libraries. We provide people with the right funnels, the right access, so that the information they get is reliable information, the right amount of reliable information. And we also provide context so that when they get that information, it's not just something that's overwhelming to them, but something they understand. Our role as librarians is often a teaching role. We must make sure when people get a book, they haven't just checked it out, but they can do something with it.
Now, I would like to take another question because we have a very limited time now. It is from, she has written, Miss Jess Denin. She has written, hello, from Victoria University in Wellington, New Zealand. A question for Professor Mecken. Thank you for an interesting presentation. You have mentioned information integrity and information quality. Are these ideas interchangeable in the library practice, or they are useful to distinguish?
They're not really entirely interchangeable. Quality information should have integrity, but information integrity can also apply to information that is not actually of the highest quality, but has some truth there. The example that I was using earlier about the historian applies. There are works that are, in fact, well-respected works, the quality is high, but there is some misinformation there. The quality of information in and of itself is something we need to care about. And at that level, integrity and quality overlap. But integrity also means when you've got quality information, you can show why, you can persuade people. You've got that context information that says, yes, this is true. You've got the context information over time so that you may be able to look backward and say, well, this wasn't true at some point, but it is now. For our purposes within libraries, we don't necessarily want to distinguish between them too often, because for most of our users coming in, they want something. They want something high quality. They want to be sure that it has integrity. And what we really are trying to do when someone comes to us is couple those concepts so that the works we give them, the advice we give them, contains both elements. Not always the easiest thing to do, because we also have to understand what brings about quality, what factors are in a lot of different fields. So I can tell you something about what works in computer science. I could tell you something about what works in some of the social sciences. If we're talking about chemistry, I really don't know what the quality of an article is there, but I can tell you something about its integrity because I can tell you the process that the authors went through and the publishers went through to make sure that it had integrity. So I hope that's somewhat useful distinction. I can't hear the moderator.
Hello?
Oh, there.
Can you hear me, sir, now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, so the exchange of knowledge has always been an important objective of the library, really very important. And this would be possible when libraries agree to extend their role beyond the geographical boundaries by using state-of-the-art technology. So the use of technology is really very important, and another important factor is how we can connect with each other. So with this note, I would like to take another question, that behind authenticity. This is the last question we are taking in this session because time is over. So this question is beside authenticity of the data and the person as a source who shares information. And for me, it seems that his interpretation of data is very diverse. Do you think that it makes a difference who presents information a library of different types of fields, World Wide Web, different disciplines of science, cultural differences, media, and politics?
Well,
It's from Bernard Andreessen.
okay. So, if I understood the question correctly, it's a question of who presents it and where we get the information. Certainly, we work in the digital world today. There are people I know who feel that printed book is a more reliable source than in the internet, but that's actually not really true. Printed book merely means that there was a publisher that had enough money to put it into paper and thought there was an audience for that. Where we need to be careful is when we point at sources in the digital world, that we point at sources where we ourselves, as librarians, are sure this is reliable and it is reliable over time. One of the projects that I'm involved in is with the Internet Archive. I hope you all know what the Internet Archive is. It has been collecting web pages and also open access books over time. And it has been working with Wikipedia to fill in links so that when a book is that they have is cited in a Wikipedia article. The link goes to the source itself, to the book at the archive, so that the readers can see the source, can see the work itself. The more we can use the tools that libraries have to link people to sources, to facts, to reliable sources and facts, the further ahead we are. That's part of integrity.
So, which we have taken, before I would, me and Dr. PK propose a vote of thanks. I would like to end up with this note that libraries plays a very significant role in providing a good education and knowledge of high quality information retrieval, and the digital information professional is a key player in the digital library environment for identification and authentication of quality and relevant information. And it's really very important that the users or the people should have the access to the professionals for inquiring and getting assistance in retrieving the needed information in digital environment. So that we can have a control about the fake news or unauthenticated information. So now I would like to thank Professor Michael, and we have Emily with us. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. And I would like to thank all our viewers who are here with us, who have joined this webinar and who have posed really very important questions and really very serious questions to the authentication of the information and the authentication of and the role of the librarians is really very important. So with this note, I would like to thank Dr. P.K. Bhattacharya and Dr. Ganguly for inviting me here as a moderator, and I would like to thank Professor Michael for his very informative presentation, and he has raised a very important question which should be, as a librarian, it is our duty to think about it, how we could, because we can do a revolution and we can make a change in the information society by telling our viewers about what is good and what is wrong. What is the role of a new age librarian in new digital technological era. Otherwise, everything is accessible to everybody in a click of mouse. Thank you so much. And I over to Dr. Bhattacharya.
So thank you, Professor Michael, for your absorbing presentation, and credit goes to your knowledge and your way of thinking and the kind way you have presented the major issue of fake news surrounding everywhere. So in fact, through social media, through different kind of news media, print media, everywhere. So with this, what we want to tell to all our participants, that this is just the beginning. Professor Michael will be here in ICDL. So I know that you all have several questions. In fact, we have also received many questions. So he will be here to, provide all answer to your questions. And also you can send us your whatever questions you have. So we will take up those issues in the forthcoming ICDL, where we will have a such kind of discussion in more detail, and we hope to reach to a better conclusion from there on. So I welcome all of you for such absorbing discussion in ICDL event. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Recording will be available in the ICDL website. So anyone who missed this or rather joined us later can see it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay. Good day, sir.
Bye.
Bye.